Well, howdy. My name is Carly Anderson, and this is Dr. Jennifer Strong. And today we will be presenting using children's literature as a gateway for exploring international culture. We're from the Agricultural Leadership, Education, and Communications Department here at Texas A&M University. So here's a little bit about the why behind selecting children's literature for use in the classroom. It's been found that storytelling is actually an effective way to perpetuate culture and express complex ideas in sort of easier, comprehensible ways. Dr. Jen and I refer to this as taking complex concepts and putting them in bite-sized, chewable pieces for students to understand. And then also in the classroom, stories have been proven effective, especially in domestic classrooms, when it comes to internationalizing curriculum for students. Additionally, it's been found that the exposure of domestic students to international culture actually has a positive impact on the students' ability to understand cultural relativism and perform in a more effective way in culturally diverse society. And additionally, it's been found that using children's literature as a training tool inside international agriculture extension is actually an effective way to promote the synthesis of their knowledge. These are all contributing to the reasons why we believe children's literature plays an important role in furthering UNESCO's call to increase global literacy, andragogy, and those high impact experiences. So to implement children's literature in a classroom where it can be most effective, we've drafted an assignment and then actually placed this assignment in a classroom in real time. So sort of the objectives of this assignment were surrounding culture, critical thinking, and high impact experience. We wanted this assignment to increase students' ability to research other cultures. We had hopes that this assignment would increase the critical thinking skills and behaviors for students. And we wanted students to engage in synthesizing literature for cultural implications of those class concepts.
Thanks, Carly. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the assignment. So what we did in our agricultural leadership ethics course was we used to have an assignment that was just about an artifact. So finding an artifact from any culture that either introduced or perpetuated this idea of morals. So as we got more into it, we got some really great examples. Dr. Barry Boyd and I got a grant looking at transformational teaching, and we did this in accordance with our libraries. And as we talked to our librarian, she said, hey, you know what? What about children's lit, focusing on that? And that was actually an aspect that we already talked about in this assignment, specifically looking at these two books. So the first one there is The Berenstain Bears and its sister and the Golden Rule. So the cool thing about the Golden Rule is it is actually the only moral and ethical principle that cuts across culturally. So every major religion actually has a aspect of the Golden Rule in it. So do unto others as you would have done unto you from a morality point of view. So we introduced that into our classroom. The other book that we used in an ag classroom, this one is very controversial, is this That's Why We Don't Eat Animals. So this book is all about why veganism is important, and it takes the viewpoint of the animals as a humanistic characterization. So it was the family of pigs that were really sad about being separated, or the chicken that was stuck in the cage and he really just wanted to be outside and hang out with all of his buddies. So introducing that to our students, we talked about what is the moral of the story, right? So children's lit absolutely lent itself to this idea of we are teaching morality to our kiddos through children's literature. We wanted to add the aspects of understanding the differences in culture. So in our class, we refer to that as cultural relativism. We wanted to introduce why cultural relativism was also impactful in this idea. So we modified this assignment to include that students needed to look for examples outside of their identified culture. So how do other cultures use children's literature in order to perpetuate this idea of morality? morality. So understanding this idea of social contract, morality, and cultural relevance, looking at that difference between the ought and the ought not, and how do we help people kind of socialize into that idea. So looking at the assignment, the first thing we had the students do was to actually find the literature. Now, this took first a Google search. They had to figure out what culture they wanted to focus on. Then it took a Google search, and then it took actually speaking with our librarians here at Texas A&M, which was a great experience for our students. They actually had to go and visit the library, which was a novel idea for some of them. And so the librarians helped them choose books that made the most sense and could answer the prompt. They had to then read and analyze this book. So looking at how does this specific text introduce, perpetuate, or reinforce morality and ethics? Then they had to also tell us in a written reflection, what is the moral of the story? So what was the point? How does that connect back to ethical theories that we've talked about? Then the other layer of their reflection that they actually posted on, we have Canvas, but whatever LMS system that you have can absolutely work fine, is this idea of Kohlberg and his moral development. So Kohlberg says that we each develop our morality in different times, and there are different times within our development that certain things resonate with us most. So is it about punishment? If so, we're in kind of the lower part of Kohlberg's development. If it's about helping other people, we're a little bit higher in that development. So they had to say, where in the stages and levels of Kohlberg would this book actually fit? And then after they posted, which was due before the class, we spent time in groups, small pods, and they did I think, pair share type of activity where they talked about their own personal experiences, their book. If they actually had the physical book, they brought it to show their fellow students. But they went through these 3 questions, and then they got to share to the whole class. So what's great about this is our ethics class, when we first did this activity, we had 30 students in the class. And so everyone got to stand up and talk about their artifact. Since then, we actually have 125 in our course. So this was a really cool way to still have that assignment, have them do the personal reflection and writing piece, but share it in a small group, and then choose one out of that small group to share to the whole group so that everyone got to learn from each other. It was a really cool exercise in reciprocity.
We're going to talk a little bit about the results from what we found throughout this assignment. And so from the group of 125 students, it was found that 95% of those students were actually able to summarize the story and extrapolate, the moral of that story, and also discuss how the story introduces, perpetuates, or reinforces those cultural ideals of morality and ethics. And it was found that all 125 students articulated that impact that culture has on culturally relevant morality. And so we have some recommendations for how this could be implemented in your own classroom or context. There are many titles that have been popularized that give us a window into another culture besides our own. Stories like Beatrice's Goat and the Story of Ferdinand. And then also this would be an interesting opportunity to apply this children's literature to specific cultures or contexts to kind of narrow that interest to a specific context to research.
Absolutely. So if you have a student that is interested in a certain study abroad experience, this is a great way to introduce them to that culture before they, pull the plug, I guess, and actually go for it. It's also, if you're working on a grant or you're working with a population that is outside of the continental US, you can then say, all right, specifically, I want you to look for these things. So it's really a cool way to kind of make it your own.
And then additionally, opportunities like this serve as the chances for students to adopt this higher order thinking skill, and then also practice this critical thinking skill and behavior in their own assignment practices. And then additionally, searching for children's literature and a culture outside of your own, it serves as a high impact experience because of that connection to internationalized curriculum. And this is connecting back to UNESCO's call while also being place bound in a domestic classroom.
Because we all know COVID has hit us in all sorts of different ways. So if you're not able to do that study abroad, if you're not able to take students into that different context, this is a great way to walk them softly into that experience. And we know that sometimes it can be jarring. So anything we can do to increase students' abilities, knowledge, and skills, we want to impart. So that's why Carly and I were so passionate about bringing this to you today, because it worked, y'all. And we suggest that you use this too. Thank you.
Thank you.